We're talking about a car-sized rover here. This is an enormous rover that we're sending to Mars.
It's the most sophisticated, complex, capable rover we've ever designed. Really, the number one goal is to figure out if Mars was a friendly environment for life or not. We want to really determine if Mars was ever a habitable place. My name is Ashwin Vasavada. I'm the Deputy Project Scientist for the Mars Science Laboratory rover mission, which is the next rover mission to Mars.
My name is Jessica Samuels. We are at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and I am a systems engineer on the Mars Science Laboratory mission.
We started exploring Mars, the U.S. started exploring Mars in the 60s. The first spacecraft flew by Mars and took pictures. And then we finally were able to land on Mars in the 1970s with some fixed landers. But then even back then, they were dreaming of the time when you could drive around the surface. And it took until about 1997 to land on the surface of Mars with Mars Pathfinder. And it carried a little rover about this big. It was the first time we've actually driven around the surface robotically on another planet. Then in the 2003, 2004 timeframe, we launched this whole next generation sort of golf cart-sized rovers, Spirit and Opportunity. And they went around and took lots of fantastic pictures and chemical data by going up and placing sensors on rocks and soils. But they weren't able to access the material in the rock itself. And so the next idea was to bring a big drill and sample the material and put it inside some fairly sophisticated laboratory instruments. And that's how we get to MSL.
So we're standing here with a model of the Mars Science Laboratory mission rover. The first thing that you can just see is that it's enormous. This is a huge rover that we're sending to Mars. Just by the sheer volume of the wheels, this vehicle is meant to drive. We are going to explore a lot of ground with this rover. The other thing that's really massive and very intense is the robotic arm.
This rover, one of the reasons it's so big and so capable is that it has a 6-foot arm on the end of it and a jackhammer drill. This rover will actually go up to rocks and drill into the rock and acquire samples. It's the first time we've ever done that.
So we're going to use this robotic arm, we're going to take a sample, and inside the belly of the rover is where we have 2 different science instruments which will take those samples and be able to tell us in much more detail really what the elemental component is of that sample.
We're really going to conduct some pretty sophisticated chemical studies and geologic studies to determine if the environment was one that's friendly to life. Although we don't completely understand life and how life works, one thing we do understand is that water is required for every form of life that we know. And so the way we search for life in the solar system and the universe is primarily by starting for looking for water. One of the really exciting things that we've learned about Mars is there's evidence that in the past there were rivers flowing with water on the surface. There were streams, maybe lakes, maybe even an ocean. And yet we've never actually landed in these areas where all that action was happening. So this will be the first time we're landing in this earliest ancient terrain, which was extremely Earth-like, to look for evidence that life may have once existed on Mars.